if it could be said what God is with concepts, then that God would be limited. And what I know God to be is unlimited, meaning that before concepts. And what is remarkable also is that God cannot merely just be independent of us, because if we speak about God, very often when we speak about God, it's because we have created a sort of conceptual shape of what we imagine God to be, you see. I remember once my own master, Sri Poonja Ji, when he first met his master, Sri Ramana Maharshi, who I'm sure you all know of Ramana Maharshi being the shop you are here, Watkins. When he first met Sri Ramana Maharshi, he himself was having earlier experiences where he was playing with God in the form of Krishna. So he was very much feeling, that, I have played with God, like this. And he had asked many sadhus in those days, which are wandering monks, have you seen God? But it was a bit of a cheeky question. He was asking, have you met God? And have you seen God? And of course, most of them couldn't answer. They started to give some philosophy or something like this about it. So when he had met Sri Ramana Maharshi, by the way, he had asked the Maharshi, can you see God? And the Maharshi answered and said, you cannot see God because God is not an object. God is the subject. And that twisted his thinking for a while, because he said God can never be an object, because an object cannot exist independent of the perceiving subject. God is not the thing seen. God is the seeing of it. You see? So when we ask what is God, any notion we have about God would not be true. What I experience as God cannot be really put into words like that. But if some can be, I would say that God is that within which all concepts are perceived, and their intention, their limitations are perceived in that. So I put that God is pure awareness. What I actually said is that I don't have a future, or a past, actually. So therefore I'm supremely happy. I say like this, and it's not being provocative or being, mystical or metaphysical. I just mean that it's totally unreal. Nobody has ever experienced the future. Nobody's ever experienced tomorrow. It's just concepts about the time like this, and even about the present. Even the present that is linked with past and future, I'm also not that concerned deeply about it. The life is unfolding. There's something fresh in that, because we're not trying to make it different from what it is. What it is. I don't have a strong projections that I want life to fit into. Mm-hmm. So there's much more freedom and lightness in it, and like we often amongst us, you're saying that it's just too much love, and there's too much joy, too much peace, there's too much happiness, because actually we're not trying to do anything at all, and yet the activity in Sahaja is full on somehow. So it seems like it's a real paradox in some way, because it seems as though we're driven, and yet at the same time we're very present. And it's not easy to explain. I don't try to. I explain only to people who I feel that they're ready to hear something like that. We're not so enthusiastic to tell people about what we're doing or something. So only to say that it is so beautiful to live when you're free of too much intentions. You see, there's
true freedom.
Yes, I feel it is true freedom. Freedom beyond even the concept of freedom. It's just a sort of, there's a kind of innocence in it. not trying to manipulate the life to look like how you think it should be and stuff like this. So I'm very happy when we can meet and share like that, because people do genuinely feel something from that and want to go more deeply into exploring that, not just merely as a concept, but as a way of bringing that into their lives more, you know. So yeah, it's
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay.
prior to my sister's what happened with her, because she was shot really by the police as a mistake, clearly, but she was shot and paralyzed by that shooting, no? Which she spent the rest of her life up until 3 years ago, mostly in bed, because she was not able to move beneath her solar plexus. Everything was gone. But in those days I was working, prior to that, I was working as a street artist making portraits just down here at Henry Irving statue and outside the portrait gallery. I did many years working as a street artist then, you know. And
By the way, your calligraphy is beautiful, by the way. Your writing, it's gorgeous.
So what happened is that the morning I found out my sister was shot, I felt that was a huge turning point in terms of my maturity as a human being and so on, because it impacted on the world of my family and a lot of people, in fact, because it was a time of some racial and political tensions in this country, particularly with folks around the police and the Afro-Caribbean community and so on. So some things had been happening, and the shooting of my sister was just a climaxing of some tensions that happened in that time. And so she was shot and paralyzed, and her life totally changed because of that. Also, all our family, our lives changed. I stopped working on the street for a while. I had to grow up very quickly, in fact, because I was not used to being in front of cameras, and to the extent that, I was surrounded a lot by the media. Because of all my family who were approached, I was the one who could most speak in that kind of coherent way in that way. So that happened then, and
So you kind of became the spokesperson of family in a sense?
yes, it came like this, and but it also led to that was in 1985. In 1987, a huge turning point again, another huge earthquake movement in my life when I met a young Christian mystic in my town, and through my meeting with him, the biggest change I would say in my life up until then happened. The shooting of my sister was not the biggest thing in my life. The biggest thing in my life I'd have to put down to the meeting of Michael, a young Afro-Caribbean man from Bristol, I think he was from there, but he lived in Brixton, and just meeting with him and his presence and wisdom and guidance, I came to some breakthrough in my life. Just total change that happened like this, and that continued, and that's what later on I ended up going to India. That was another push that I ended up going to India. And she's a very free person, very free spirit, and if you imagine someone like this, who in one instant, in one moment, your whole life changed. You're not able to walk again. I mean, not even with a sticks or nothing. She had no feeling in her legs at all. So, it's your life changed like this in 1 second, and the rest of your life you're spending basically needing people to take care of you and to like this. So she lived from that time, 1985, until 2011. She lived in that situation, and I remember talking with her, and she spoke about how in some way it has been a really good thing for her, because her life was, as people often do, when we have very tragic or intense experiencing, when many people feel that they should be sorry for you, if you're honest, many people will tell you, listen, this is the best thing for me, because I needed my life to be, to be slammed or to be smashed, to release and to start a new chapter in my life. And I felt that it was like that for her up to a point. I can say like this. There were also frustrations there too, but I was happy enough to listen and to hear her speak, and there were positive sides to her for that. But we never really got deeply into the subject that we are sharing now. And I'm not one to force anyone. It's not like it's my sister, so I should try. If there isn't intuitively the space opening to do this, I will not go there. There must be already something to correspond, but I will not initiate that type of thing unless I feel it in my heart. We were just talking about this yesterday. We were sitting down because a number of people. We just had an intensive retreat in London, in the East End of London, and so a lot of people have shown up who have not seen for quite some time. And it just turned out yesterday we were all sitting together, and we started to talk about our earlier meetings together, and it was just so powerful how things link in like this. And then people were sometimes asking me, because I mentioned, people have often asked, this Michael, is he a real guy or did you make him up? I said, no, he's very real. I don't make anything up. And one woman who was writing a piece about me said, is it possible to meet Michael? And I said, I have no contact with Michael at all, But then just a few days after, walking in Brixton one day, I saw him. I was with my partner, and we saw him. And I said, Michael, what's happening? And we met. I invited him home, so he came home, and we took the camera out and we recorded. Do you know about this, Jaya? Yeah, okay. We recorded something, but I have not really wanted to show anything of him because he is not really wanting to be in that kind of, in any kind of public setting, So I saw him since then, but I found that what I realized, what has happened in my life, sometimes I meet people, and it was very, very significant, that meeting. But then I see them later, and I saw that the same charge, the same potency of meeting, that time was over, and they'd moved on. It's like I see meetings often as instruments of consciousness or of God that brings you to your next stage, but it's not really about the person. Because sometimes you meet again, and that person is changed, and that relationship is over. But it was deeply significant at the time because it really triggered such a great opening in my life in this way. We were brought up in a very Christian environment, from childhood we were brought like this. And also when in the early stages of this awakening, and it was taking a very Christian expression, my mother was very happy. She said, and none of my children are in, we just have to wait for the other, sort of like 6 to come, But it was a much more of a unique unfolding for me, because as I stepped away from a group that I was, sort of worshipping with, because something was not right in it for me, and I felt to just walk with the trust in that which I felt inside my heart. It took me on a different journey, a much more singular journey for a while. And then, of course, my mother was witness to this as well too, and she could not understand. She felt very disappointed, actually, by that. But as time went on, other members of the family slowly, like one of my sisters is deeply in the middle of this. She goes hot and cold a bit, but now we've been here in this retreat, she is really kind of like, she's on fire at the moment. And some cousins have come, one of my nephews have come, my daughter is also living with me. She's having a hard satsang because she came to live with me, unlike everyone else who come because of this fire for truth. She came to be with her father, so it's been a little bit like that. But and I have to admit, I don't have a desire, a special desire for my family to come. I know now that there are families that can be stronger than blood ties, like the family of Sahaj at the moment, the people we live with, some of them are here. We are much a deeper and truer relationship than I would say with my blood family. Although we are also close, the blood family is also close, but we're not close in this way. That we grow together. Things are really brought out and are very open. We don't in Sahaja where we live. There's not any secrecy in that way. Things are very transparent, and we're very open, very loving, very strong in that way. So that is the proof of it in some way, And I'm always open to anyone. We don't have anyone who I feel don't stand a chance. Anyone, we are open to anybody, and so the family is growing in a very genuine way. That is, but we're not aiming at membership. We're just moving in this way. And if none of my family no more come, it's not in my hands to decide that. Well, if you say, how do you know if the observer is real? It must mean that the one who must ascertain whether the observer is real or not must be independent of the observer anyway. Isn't it? So if this is true, then the observer must only be itself phenomenal. You see, that's the first point. Because people do ask, how do you know, when I get to the point where I am, when I've reached where I should be, how can I be clear that this is the real place or not? Well, first of all, these questions won't come. They won't come there. If the question at the moment is valid enough to say, how will I know if the observer is real or not? Well, even the term, if the observer can be perceived, it must itself be phenomenal. And what recognizing or discerns whether something is phenomenal or not must be something outside of the box of phenomenality to observe that. I hope this is understandable. Nothing wrong with enjoying the physical, the manifestation. We cannot help it. You will enjoy or suffer it, whichever way we experience it. That's the important thing. I don't speak against the experiencing of phenomena, you see. And when I use the example about being distracted, I cannot say that anything can distract me from what I am. That is clear now. When we believe this, it's only real in terms of our belief. It's not real as an actuality. We just believe that, and we believe it into existence, and then we suffer what we believe in. I don't believe that. I see clearly that nothing can separate me from what I am. That was just a misconception, which for some time was believed, and now is not anymore believed. It's been seen through like that. But you started by saying that we are physical beings and so on. We have a physical aspect, which you may say is the body, and that physical or phenomenal aspect, which is the body, is our weakest sheath. It's like it is that which belongs to time. It itself is a time body. It had a beginning and will have an end also. So the body is that aspect of ourself which is impermanent. But the body and the senses are watched. The body does not watch that which sees it. The body itself is just merely, it's not even sentient. It is just the instrument that is necessary for a consciousness to taste experiencing. So we are not the body, and yet so many human beings, we believe we are the body. Not because any single person is responsible for that belief, but that it's for a while unavoidable, inevitable, that consciousness, when it expresses as humanity or as form, will for a time identify with that form and take the form to be what it is. And maturity, spiritual maturity, will only be to the extent that the consciousness awakens from this dream that it is phenomenal and recognizes its non-phenomenal origin. There are simpler ways of putting that. I find that's how I'm speaking about it now, but in effect that's what it is. Consciousness is not an object. It cannot be measured as we can measure form or anything that has composed of the 5 elements. Consciousness is not a construct out of the five elements. It's the other way around, that the five elements are themselves, emanations out of consciousness, and are perceived in consciousness, by consciousness, through consciousness, as ephemeral plays of or movements inside the unmoving source. I'm not a vegetarian, and I feel that it's important for me to admit that also. It's my culture. Also, I had some physical ailments also to my body. I just did some allergy tests and things like this as well too. And in a way, they say, well, in a way, some people need to eat this. But I'm not using this as an excuse. I mean, it's part of my culture. We grew up in the Caribbean. I'm used to eating meat. I don't feel ashamed of that. In fact, I feel in this case, because quite often people say, how can you be some guru? I don't say I'm a guru, by the way. But anyway, they say, how can you be like some spiritual person, you eat meat and so on? And I said, well, just consider what you're saying. If you're saying only vegetarians can be awakened or something like this, it means that hardly anybody from South America will make it, basically, or from the Caribbean, and nobody from Islam, or hardly any, or you're rejecting a whole part of the world of humankind to say that only some people who are maybe their temperament or their we don't know why some people enjoy eating one thing and don't enjoy another thing. You cannot use judgment like these to say that they determine whether you are qualified to be an awakened being or not. Those are very trivial arguments. But I don't know if what you said was, you said that, what do I feel about it?
Yeah. I was just curious what you feel about it, yes. I'm not a vegetarian.
I don't focus on these things because I feel that nothing phenomenal can stop you from awakening to the truth of what you are. If you are a being who has an attraction for a non-vegetarian food, it is God, life, grace that puts that inside your consciousness. And if you're someone who, some people, they don't live on food either. Does it make them more spiritual than others? It does not do that. These are just to do with human concepts. I do not stand for cruelty to animals. This is a different thing. But if people find that they are meat eaters and so on, I would not. I'm happy that I'm not on that side to say that because you eat meat or whatever it is that you are a lesser candidate for freedom than someone who doesn't, or something like this. I really stand by that nothing phenomenal can stop you from realizing the truth of who you are. It has never been like that. Maybe some religious views maybe say like that, and certainly there is an argument for it, because in the beginning of, say, for instance, you're drawn to meditation, it's well been expressed that some foods, particularly the eating of meat or spicy food, stimulates more mental activity, and so people who wish to meditate may find that it's a little bit more, the food carries some kind of noise or something. This is true. But ultimately, as one progresses and go deeper into the state of consciousness, these things, they remain on the surface. They're not so impactful. As one's consciousness becomes more refined, it moves away from the brutal identity. It is the ego. The thing is more about ego than about what you do or don't do. If the consciousness is living in the notion of yourself as an ego, of course nobody calls himself an ego. So by ego, what I simply mean is a strong belief that you are the body, and that you are the thinker of your thoughts and the doer of your actions, and that your conditioning is who you are. You function from that root of conditioning and believe that your experiences are factual and not merely subjective. Then that's a very densely ignorant state of being. It is when the consciousness is deeply identified as a person that all the atrocities in existence can come into play. The ones who have really come back or rediscovered their innate nature as consciousness, that don't exhibit that kind of cruelty or that sort of arrogance or selfishness. In fact, the contrary is like that. So the issue is not about whether you eat meat or not eat meat, but how much you are endowed with an identity as an ego or as presence. That's more the significant factor. Huh?
Sure.
Extreme, because there are people who say, they don't believe in any sort of cruelty or anything like that. And of course,
some Buddhists do say that.
Yes, yes. There are a group of a religion in India. I think the Jains, for instance, that take it a step further. They wear like a mask over the face and stuff like this, so that they consider even the breathing. You may breathe certain beings, insects or whatever, and that you breathing them in is actually affecting their life and so on. They walk on the street with brushes and they sweep the street so that to prevent themselves from stepping on any living beings and so on. So how far do we take this, you see? I say that consciousness has created this diverse ways of expression, you see, so that in fact we all learn from each other in some way. It would be a terrible thing if there was only one religion in this world or one set of view. It would be stifling, because human beings, until they evolve to a level of beyond the ego, we need to learn from each other. We need to reflect the weaknesses in each other, not deliberately, but just by the fact of our presence and so on. No? And our orientation, if your orientation is towards vegetarianism or towards eating meat or towards being creative or towards whatever it is, it has a richness to this world in the sense that each one is inspired by, or we learn from each other positively or negatively. So I think it just makes a very rich world. And we like to feel very elitist about some things, but as though elitism is a high state of being. But when we look into it, it's actually a very narrow and very what I'd call claustrophobic state of consciousness, like that. The opposite is true, that as consciousness becomes more refined in itself, people are a lot more open, more flexible, less narrow-minded, much more universal and all-encompassing in their understanding and their attitude towards life.
Sure.
And they begin to really investigate more deeply, authentically into their nature. They are making discoveries more and more that just sort of bring you into that state without actually studying any particular subject. You learn or absorb in a very holistic way, in a very total way, like this. And you see that many times when people speak about these things, it's very much endowed with ignorance. As soon as you go a little bit deeper into it, you find a world that you really cannot fathom, the diverse expressions of life. You cannot. We systemize that because our minds work in such a limited way. When we're not functioning as consciousness, just functioning as individual autonomous human beings, we have to systemize life into little pockets of seeing, because we are not able to comprehend life in a fuller, in a grander way, or in a more panoramic way. We work in very much into the corners and stuff, and try to make our small seeing appear to be sort of universal, which it is not.